So I'm with Karen Drill. So before we really go into nonprofit work and maybe even consulting, I wanted to kind of learn more about you. So firstly, can you tell me a little about yourself and your current role as a principal consultant at Data Literacy for Social Change?
Sure. So I have been working in the applied research and program evaluation field for about almost 20 years now, actually. It's kind of hard to believe. And I have worked largely with schools, education entities, nonprofit organizations, folks in health. Um, and recently I decided to split off my capacity building arm, which is under the umbrella of Drill Consulting, and make it its
Mhm.
own thing, data literacy for social change. Because I've really
Okay.
seen a lot with the nonprofits that I work with, that there can be
Mhm.
a pretty large knowledge and skills gap in terms of the types of data that they should be using to secure funding, to meet their community's needs. Um, and that sometimes folks in nonprofits are just kind of winging it. And so I really wanted to be much more purposeful about providing trainings that could kind of target and meet folks where they are to be able to use their data most effectively for their organization and their communities.
Yeah, and so when you're talking about data literacy, what I think firstly can we maybe like define this, but kind of like why does it matter and really like who does it affect the most? Because I think that might help kind of our conversation moving forward too.
Yeah, I think data literacy is kind of a new term to a lot of
Mhm.
people. So the definition that I wrote down is the ability to find, access, work with, and analyze data to responsibly inform decisions that you make every day. So oftentimes you hear about data informed or data driven decision making in the corporate world. It matters a lot in the nonprofit world because folks are often applying for funding, and funders have requirements around evaluation and metrics. They want to see progress, they want to see outcomes. So there's a direct tie with understanding how to use data
Okay.
effectively to be able to secure funding, which then leads to being able to deliver programs.
So are these like the data that you're looking at? Are these like very like sophisticated databases? Or are they just basically like Excel files?
Oh, it's not even databases. So we're talking like
Yeah.
much broader ideas around data. So if you think about coming
Okay.
out of academia, you think
Hmm.
about research, and
Yeah.
with research, we begin with a question. So it's always inquiry focused. What is your question? And
Hmm.
then how do you answer it? And
Yeah.
so we start first, at least try and work toward nonprofit organizations asking questions about their own communities and about whether or not they're meeting their community's needs, or um, what is it that they're trying to do. And then we create a whole evaluation plan, data collection plan, analysis and reporting structure to gather the information that they need to answer their questions. So this can be qualitative data through interviews and focus groups. It can be quantitative data through administrative data or surveys. It can be census data. It can be um, community needs assessments. So there's just
Hmm.
a wide array of how data are used within nonprofit contexts. So it's not so much down to the micro level. It's important to have databases and to use that information, but I'm operating both from the sort of macro and micro level.
And speaking of that, like, what does that day to day really look like? Because are you just in data a lot? Are you kind of talking with clients? Because just how does that go about?
Yeah, it's a real mixed bag. And so I am
Mhm.
a huge fan of variety, which is why I
Yeah.
love my line of work. Um,
Hmm.
some days I'm providing coaching to collaborators. For example, last week I was working with a collaborator on how to code qualitative data that comes out of open-ended responses in surveys. So going from the process of coding to collapsing codes to identifying themes to then reporting those themes out. So that was last week. That's in the training kind of arm. And then in my other side, I'm doing either weighting surveys, crafting evaluation plans, conducting interviews, conducting focus groups, analyzing focus groups, project management. It really runs the gamut.
I mean, all seems like very similar to kind of work I was doing and kind of work that I kind of saw other like social science folks doing. So like, I mean, this really gets lands in the next question. Like, did you envision yourself doing this type of role when you left academia? Like, did you initially plan to be a professor, possibly? Like,
Yeah,
are you?
so yeah, like you said, this is very much social science. So this falls sort of under the umbrella of applied social science research rather than
Yeah.
academic research. So I knew the minute that I was accepted into my doctoral program that I would be doing applied work. So I did not have
Okay.
a
That's good.
vision of being in academia because I was already working in applied
Mhm.
research. So the doctoral program was a way to enhance and deepen my knowledge um, around research and methods. So it was really an addition to what I was already doing.
So do you think your PhD like prepared you for what you're currently doing, or were there some aspects of the applied work that you're doing that just wasn't really taught during your program?
I would say 90% of what I do was not
Mhm.
directly taught in my doctoral
Okay.
program, which is why I found the doctoral program to be a nice accompaniment to what I
Mhm.
was already doing out in the world and in the
Gotcha.
field. But what it did do is help me focus on the areas and methods that I really wanted to
Mhm.
learn more about because I had already had this experience out in the field. So I could pinpoint specifically what I was lacking and then focus on that in my program and then bring it back to my applied work in a richer and deeper way. So absolutely enhanced what I'm doing. I can't say that everything I learned in my doctoral program. Um, I think had I gone to my doctoral program without the experience, I don't think I would be as strong as I currently am in what I bring to the table to my collaborators and clients.
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely helps because I know like I went directly from like a master's to a PhD, and I know some others do as well in humanities. But yeah, I think that outside experience does kind of help like lend like that focus what you're talking about. And like so to kind of continue on with that sort of topic, so like from your own experience, what were some of those like crucial skills that you were learning like on the job, like through your applied research, maybe like whether it relates to consulting, like what were some of those skills that you would recommend just people that are looking for careers outside of academia?
Yeah, I did jot some thoughts down to that. I
Yeah.
think, some of the things that didn't come up in the doctoral program that I definitely learned more from being in the field and doing consulting work that I think are really critical would be
Mhm.
project management, proposal writing, budgeting. And then I also just think effective communication, because I think sometimes when we're operating solely in the academic world and giving presentations to other academic audiences, there's a different kind of language and way that we communicate in those spaces compared to communicating out in community-based spaces. And you have to be able to translate that information in a way that both audiences can understand what you're saying. So if you're communicating out to a nonprofit organization that maybe works around like food insecurity or something, you're not talking to an academic audience. So you have to be able to translate the same information in a way that can be heard and understood and then acted upon.
Yeah, and that's pretty similar to like what a lot of people talk about, like from academia to industry. And I think it may be a good way to kind of think about that in relation like nonprofit work. And like, do you feel that when we talk, when like just in, I guess, this social media sphere, when PhD, when folks are talking about careers outside of academia, do you feel like that nonprofit work gets left out? And do you feel like there's a reason for it? Because I know that there's so many options, but you just don't want to get in the binary of like there's industry or there's academia. So maybe if you could speak to that, you've kind of seen that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. Um, I don't recall there ever being a conversation within my program about working directly with nonprofit organizations in a like data literacy support capacity. Um, and I'm not sure why. And that was really a large impetus for me to go into working directly with nonprofits because I saw and continue to see that huge gap. I think nonprofits can really benefit so much from partnerships with folks who either are in academia or outside of academia that bring a skill set around data use. Um, but I don't know why it hadn't really come up as an option or something that was discussed much.
And like, so what do you think some of the benefits are, like, if you wanted to work for either like working directly at a nonprofit company or maybe like a consultant? Like, what are the benefits compared to maybe just doing just like a 9 to 5 job that, yeah, just like your average 9 to 5 job, like maybe at an industry type of role? Like, what are the benefits of
Mhm.
the nonprofit world?
I mean, I think one of the main benefits, and this is maybe more subjective related to me, is that I can see the usefulness of what I'm doing. Like I feel
Yeah.
like I'm providing something useful and I can see that impact right away when someone that I'm working with kind of lights up because they understand a concept that they can now apply themselves. So my background is in educational psychology. So I have an educator piece in me that like I like to see people learn and grow and progress. And I think that can happen pretty quickly within the nonprofit context because there just still aren't a ton of folks who are providing that kind of support. And the other piece you mentioned about potentially working within a nonprofit as the data person, they often don't have the budget or actually even the need to have someone full time on staff whose sole role is related to data. So it makes more sense, I think, financially from a nonprofit perspective to bring in a partner, a collaborative partner from the outside. Like if I sort of sit and imagine my nonprofit collaborators, if I was working in-house with them, their data
Mhm.
needs aren't such that it's 40 hours a week. Like really it's either kind of seasonal or it's at certain times of the year when you're kind of have to be more on.
I could see that.
Um, yeah, so I think being external is kind of a win-win for both parties.
Yeah, and I guess I could see like some additional experience, like if like an academic wanted to get their foot outside of academia for a bit, they could maybe like reach out to like nonprofit groups and like try to get some experience like doing data work if they didn't want to do something like that.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think I remember like taking a course at Indiana where it's like we were doing survey research for like I think it was like it's like this Indiana uh it's like a blind association, but we were doing research for them. So it's like they're asking like for graduate students like help out. So I can definitely kind of see like what you mean in that regard. So I do wonder like how can people learn about data literacy for social change? Like I'm assuming you have a website or
Mhm.
some type of or portfolio or something people can learn more about.
Yeah, so the data literacy for social change is data dash the number four dash
Mhm.
change.com. So folks could go there and read up about it. Could also go to my other website, which is the Drill Consulting Group. But I think the Data for Change website is the one that's most relevant to today's conversation.
Yeah, and I can add in the comments and the description, so they'll be able to find it easily. And
Yeah,
I guess, and just to clarify, like, at the data literacy, are you working with a team of people or like a team of consultants or just
nope,
strictly
just
you?
me. Mhm.
Nice.
I
Yeah.
do have a large pool of collaborators that I tap into when needed, thankfully. Um, but yes, so far most of the time it is just me.
Yeah, and if there anybody that's watching or maybe reading later on the site, if they were like interested in like collaborating with data literacy for social change, is that an option or is it
Yeah,
there's like a review
absolutely.
process? Okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
good.
I'm totally welcome to collaborators. And also, I think to go back to your earlier point too, I think nonprofit organizations would absolutely welcome the
Mhm.
skills of folks from academia who, if someone just wanted to approach a nonprofit and say, hey, can I help you with your data? I suspect many would say yes. So,
Yeah, no, I think that'd be a great opportunity if people are interested. So yeah, I'll
yeah.
definitely be sure to include that. But yeah, I don't have any other questions, but I do always like to leave it open towards the end. Just if you have any additional thoughts about your journey, anything that, especially your kind of after leaving academia, anything that we haven't talked about, anything that just comes up in your mind that you feel like you need to share with people that are currently undergoing this type of transition, maybe looking for a new career path.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would just say that there are so many more options than you could even potentially imagine outside of academia. And I think if you go into academia with a very narrow focus, thinking that that's the only possibility, and then and you feel kind of constricted, it really isn't. So if you can just expand your mind and look out and realize that the skills that are acquired within a doctoral program are really generalizable to multiple spaces and organizations, there are tons of opportunities out there. I really believe that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So
Yeah.
thank you so much, Karen, for taking the time to speak with me. Again, I'm hoping people will check out your site and yeah, thank you for the time.
Yeah. Thank you. I hope this is helpful.